Hello, I'm Mark. This is my son Kendall, and we're on the home stretch of our Trail 70 build. Uh, what do you think we should jump on to next, Kendall? Try to get I don't know, make sure the electric start works, maybe get some more functions, finish up our wiring?
Yep.
All right, good answer. All right, so we will probably get inside the guts and we'll try to hook up a battery and we'll see if we can get it to turn over. We will connect the rest of our connections up here in the headlight, kind of our junction. And Kendall will probably have to put the luggage rack on so we can put our blinkers. We got our mounts here in the front, but we're going to need our luggage rack on to have our mounts for the rear for those blinkers. And hopefully, when we took apart the only thing variable we should have here is we took apart our controllers so we could paint them black. And those turned out to be quite a bit more intricate than we had planned. I've never really taken them apart before, like to that level where we just took everything out. In hindsight, maybe we should have just taped stuff off, but we really wanted to make them look as good as we could. I think that turned out really well, but pretty much our plug and play system here, the only variable that we have is probably that part where maybe we didn't quite put them back together exactly the way we were supposed to, where these switches here, everything feels pretty good, so I think we're okay. So I think first thing we'll do is we'll start with that luggage rack, so we got our mounts for blinkers, and then we'll get a battery hooked up to our system, and then we can put juice to it, and we'll see how we did.
Okay.
So with our luggage rack we've got here in the kit, this is our black one. We've also have chrome. So it's kind of I don't know, it's not really a matte, but it's not really a gloss finish. But the coverage is really pretty good on it, so we're happy with that. It's just a little more glossy than we have, but I think it'll look okay. But in the kit, when you get this one, or if you get this, we include more hardware than you need. So there's two types of fasteners that you're gonna run into depending on what you're working with. So with our clone here, we're gonna need these, I think they're M8s versus M6s. So the original Honda would use these guys. So if you buy this, you got some extra hardware that you can use for something else. Put it aside. If we have a clone frame here like we do, these are already pre-tapped, and we won't need nuts, but we include the nuts in here too because some of the model Hondas will also use these M8s. It pretty much depends on the diameter of the hole that you have there on your back of your frame. So we here, yeah, we've got M8. So these are the ones we're going to use. So to start, we don't have our exhaust in yet. So what we need to do is we've got to loosen these acorn nuts on the front. And they've got these little mounting brackets here in the front that will go over the shock tower bolts here behind the acorn nut. So for these, we'll loosen up these two, Kendall, here. So we'll probably grab the wrench for them so we can get those loose. But what we'll do is we'll loosen it and we'll slide these over the shock, and then we'll pivot it down to where the mounting hardware here will go through this long tube into this guy. But the key for this is when we're mounting it, we want to make sure that we're mounting everything and we're keeping everything pretty loose. We don't want to like sock down this side or just this part or just this. We want to try to get everything a couple threads in and make sure we have everything in location, because these guys, when they make them or when shipping, like these could be slightly bowed in a little bit, slightly bowed out. You got to be able to account for that as you're putting it in, because when you sock it down, what'll happen on one side is it'll go something like that. It's exaggerated, obviously, but if we equalize it as we tighten it together, it'll look a lot better, and we'll have a lot better time trying to get everything to line up. So can we get these guys loose here? And we have our exhaust that we're going to use, but I don't quite have it laid out yet, so we'll just put this on maybe temporary on that side, or we'll bolt it up and then we'll just deal with it when we're ready to put the exhaust on. So how loose do you got? Let's see. Don't take them all the way off. All right, so we make sure we got a couple good threads turned in there. All right. Pass me the ratchet. I'll do this side. that on and get our hardware set up. All right, Kendall, so we've got 2 bolts and we've got some heavier washers and a lock washer. So let's see, we'll just go with the washer and the fastener. So these lock nuts or lock washers and nuts are really meant for if there's not a threaded insert in there. So we have a threaded insert. So here, grab that one. All right, keep this on the side. So I'm gonna go to the back. Now I'm gonna start this on the inside of that fender washer. And I'm gonna squeeze it together to get it to go on. And then here, where we've kind of got to balance it out. All right, so what I'm seeing already is we're really gonna have to loosen these up because these little threaded inserts they have in here are really, they're proud. They're taking that surface and it's kind of moving it over. They're real thick. So this is only just gonna fit. So we've got to loosen this up even more as much as I dare. Okay, you got that one as loose as you can? Before we want to make sure that we've got at least a couple threads because we don't want to strip it. So I'll bring this one as far as I can too. All right, so there's just enough. Right, Kendall, if you can hold it there, like that, and then I'll give it a tug. Out of the way so I can get my, you ready? Push, hard, hard. There we go. All right, give me that ratchet. All right, so this one's just snug. I'll loosen it a little bit. All right, Kendall, go ahead and get that side to where it's just almost tight. All right, get this one. Can I have that socket for the... All right, do that last shock. Torn that, and then we got it. Okay, Kendall, so we picked out our blinkers. We're gonna have, we're gonna go black, obviously. So these guys, we need to thread them through here. And then we'll also put them up on our front headlight bucket of yours. You wanna grab the rears here and throw those in?
Yep.
We'll work on the front. All right, Kendall, is that the left-hand blinker or the right-hand blinker?
Well, the wire went down like this, so I'm assuming this is the left. I'm assuming so.
Oh, okay.
This is the right. I'm assuming
I'm
so.
just joking with you. There's no left or right until you put them on.
Oh.
All right, Kendall, you ready to make all the dreaded electrical connections?
Yes.
All right, so I think what we'll do is we'll plug in everything that we can, or everything. Maybe everything but the motor, I guess, for at this point. And then we will check 1, make sure our electric start works. And then 2, we can check for spark. And if we got spark, we should be able to, the engine should be able to start. So then we can continue. And the big thing is we don't want to get the gas tank in and all that in, then figure out we got some kind of electrical problem, or the electric start relay solenoid isn't clicking or working, and then we got to take all that back out. And then same thing with the coil, like maybe the coil's bad or we didn't have it plugged in right. So as long as we're getting spark and everything works, there is a chance that we got to be careful when we put the gas tank in, because the gas tank is huge for this thing. We just got to make sure that we don't, maybe we'll even like zip tie some of the wires down. When that gas tank and those fuel lines come in, that'll be pretty big. But the back here, so we've got our labeled harness that we sell. So we'll pull out a bunch here. So we got some slack, and we make our connection. So these are kind of a universal blinker or marker, they call them, Kendall. So think what we're going to do is we'll take our solid black wires and we'll call those ground. So let's plug these into the ground first. So there should be a connection here that says ground, and it's got like multiple plugs in it right there. All right, so let's plug those in there. So we're going to use our solid black wires coming out of the blinker. Yeah, make sure they get good connected. All right, and then we'll take our other side here. We'll do the same thing. Yeah, some of these are pretty tight because we're working with different manufacturers, and who knows what kind of control they have on that dimension for the outside diameter and inside dimension for the diameter on the actual mating plug. So they're usually not always perfect at all. Sometimes you got to be careful because you always want to give them like a good pull test. You don't want them to fall out at all. Ground isn't as well. Ground's important, but like I've run into them before where I'm putting these together and it's the barrel maybe smaller than the receiving piece. Yeah, and then all of a sudden they'll fall out, and then there you go. But we're good there. All right, so we got our. So now on our labeled harness, there should be a label that says left blinker.
Right here.
All right, so we'll plug that left blinker wire from our main harness to our left blinker here. And then we'll just, what's that? Yep, L turn, so left turn signal. So, and we'll also note the color here is what is it, orange?
Yep.
All right, so then we'll just double check up front while you're doing that. Just make sure that match, so it's a left here, right? So before we tuck this all in nice, we're going to test it, make sure our taillight works and all that. But when we go to do our front, we just got to double check to make sure the colors match. All right, so now what's our next turn signal?
This one.
The right side? So we've got to find, you can just do it on that side for right now. It's easier for you. Find the right
turn signal.
Yep.
Blue.
All right, so check your install. Good. Remember to always give it a good tug test. All right, now we've got our tail light. So on our tail light, we're going to have, what was it, green, brown, and then green and yellow?
Yep.
All right, so we'll find we'll just want to verify those colors and what they are. So the information that came with our tail light should be floating around. And we can just verify those colors.
The green, brown, and then the green and yellow here.
All right, so like in our taillight harness, we try to make it as easy as we can for people because sometimes they don't buy our harness. We can't just say these colors to these colors. So that's our taillight?
Yeah.
All right, so what does it say on our key here? So we've got our key that comes with the taillight.
Solid green goes to...
So what function is it?
Ground.
All right, so we know green is ground. So we already know in our harness that our green is ground.
And then
what's our next function?
Solid brown is taillight.
Okay. So, and then what's the other color?
Yellow and green is the rear brake light.
All right, so we know ground. We can assume that is green. So let's plug our green one in. All right, so now our next, what does our label say on the harness? So we should find one.
Yellow, green.
Oh, but don't look at the color because the color is, you gotta look at the label on there. Or what we want to do is we want to reference the
brake light.
Brake light?
Yeah.
Is it yellow and green though?
Yes.
Yeah, so it matches this. If you're making your own, if you have your own harness or a harness from someone else or whatever, this is where you just want to match functions to functions because the color to color, we try to control that as much as we can from our manufacturers, but it could be anything. So we just want to match functions to functions. All right. So now.
And then
have you found the taillight one?
Yep.
All right. So plug that in. Okay. So we will worry about our cable management once we verify everything is working. You can save yourself a lot of work by doing that after you're verified. Because if you go ahead and do all that work right now, and then we got to figure out, oh, wait a minute, we made a mistake on our key or something we didn't quite understand, you got to just redo it all again. All right, so I think we're good on our rear, right?
Yep.
All right, so the only connections we have inside here really are for our battery. Yep, and our frame ground. So we'll do that. We'll mount our frame ground probably to our battery bracket, I would think. So we'll scratch off some paint, but we'll do that later. So now we'll move up to the front and we'll make all our connections there. All right, now up front. So first thing we do while it's fresh, let's put our blinkers together, right? Because we remembered what colors are back there. So we need to snake our wires in through one of the holes here. So we could probably just go up through this bottom one. All right, we got that. All right, Kendall, you ready? Let's find our ground, right? So there should be another connection in here with a bunch of
Left turn light, and then the double ground.
All right, let's plug our grounds in first. So as we're making our connections, we're just going to be careful that we're not like crossing all of our wires and making a rat's nest. All right, so now let's find our left turn signal on the harness.
Orange.
Orange, there you go. We'll plug that into our left turn signal. Well, the labels really make it nice, because otherwise you could refer back to the large key here, or the function piece. So for our main harness here, bud, this is like if we didn't have the labels, or it tells. So we've got our front brake switch, front blinkers right here. So here we go. So orange, left, light blue, right, green, ground.
Green.
Right? But since we've got a labeled one, it makes it like we don't have to reference this as much. We will when we get to the motor, because we've got, we'll just verify that. All right, so what do we do next?
Put the other connection into the light blue for the right blinker.
It's gonna get pretty tight in here, so it's gonna be cramped. They should your headlight buck is pretty much like your junction box. So all the connection has happened in this poor headlight bucket. It gets pretty crowded. You got a bunch of these connectors in here too, and it just eats up so much space. All right, so now let's plug in our controllers. So we've got these snaked through, right? All right, so this is our left controller. So on our harness, there should be a label that says left controller.
Left controller.
All right, there you go. So go ahead and plug that in.
All right, that's plugged in.
Okay, now we'll just do the same thing with our right controller.
All right, right controller.
Yep, so we just need to find the label. So we've got speedometer, right? So we'll start putting them up to the top, and then here we go, right controller. Right there.
All right, that's plugged in.
Yeah, there we go. That was a good snap. Now, let's see. Let's take our speedometer. We might have to get a little funky with our speedometer, because this is one of our new ones that we found that looks real similar to a original Honda, but the darn connections aren't the same. So we're probably gonna have to do a little troubleshooting with this one. But let's continue. So the next thing we have is our headlight unit. So that should plug in. So we've got our headlight here. We've got our fasteners here, our 3. We'll make sure we don't lose these. We also have our color function key. So if we wanted to do anything custom, or if we were making our own harness, we knew exactly what color did what. But for us, ours should just plug right into the one that's labeled headlight. So that one is this one right here.
All right.
So go ahead and plug that guy in. Now we got that. We'll put this off to the side. Be careful with the dangling. All right, so the last thing.
New pieces are these little ones here.
Yeah, so let's read what we got. So what does that say?
This is part of the speedometer.
Okay.
This is front brake.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it for all the rest of it.
So our front brake, did we get that snaked in here?
Yes. It's
all right, so we'll connect that. So that'll be our front brake switch, so from our sensor. So we're going to want to connect those two together.
Speedometer, and these two need to be connected together.
Yep, so we've got our front brake. So what we've got? We've got a black, and then we've got a green.
Yellow, green.
And yellow. All right, so the switch is normally open, so when we go to
break it,
turns it
normally closed.
Yeah, so we should. So we'll get that plugged into the black. And then the green and yellow to green and yellow. Yep, double check and make sure I got that plugged in good. It's all about getting that right angle and just right. All right, so we've got that connected. All right, is there anything else we don't have connected in here yet? I think that's everything. Now we just have our speedometer we got to tackle. Okay, so what we're going to do here, Kendall, is we're going to do a little troubleshooting.
We could just splice the wires and then put a new connection on here.
We could, but I know a cheater way we can do it without doing all that hard work. So this plug and this plug, they made up, right? Physically, but I suspect that where these wires are populated here aren't going to match what we've got populated in this one. So what we're going to do is inside here, you see these little tabs that keep the wire from pulling back, the little metal bent up piece?
Yeah.
I'm going to go get a fine point pick and I'm going to press down on that little thing, bend it back, and that way I'll be able to pull these wires out one by one, and I can plug them in here, and I can just test everything and make sure I've got it in the right location before I go to repopulate this plug back together. I think that's the easiest way I figured out how to do this over time. And then also, this one has a backlight, and we've got two other indicator pieces in here. So all we really got to worry about is what functions we want to use. So let's see, we've got to find our little paper thing that came with the speedometer. Okay, so I found our piece of paper here that's got our functions for this. Now we're going to match that to our harness. So we've got our mock-up here. We took our plug apart by pushing on these tabs to get all these out. And we've kind of got our oddball prototype speedometer, or speedometer that doesn't quite plug into our wire harness. So to make it work, what we did is we've got our backlight here, which is our brown. We got that plugged into our brown here in our harness. And then we've got our two blinkers, which these should work. We picked one of these little indicator bulbs in the headlight, or excuse me, this speedometer. And then we hooked up our ground. So we had to make a custom little plug to the ground here for our harness. So we've got our headlight bucket here complete. The only custom thing we had to do was our speedometer. Now you won't have to do this if you get our stock speedometer. And our next time we order these, we're going to try to make sure we get these to where they work with our harness, so we don't have to do any of this farting around. But for us, this here makes it easy to troubleshoot, because like, oh no, this is the wrong one. You just grab it and you put it into the right one before you go ahead and click these back into the plastic housing. So this is great for you just want to make sure we're not touching, that we don't get any false readings, and we're not touching any ground because we're safe there. We won't have a direct short, it won't pop a fuse. So I think we're ready to hook up our battery, Kendall, and test out our functions. Okay, Kendall, so we're in the back. We've got our battery negative. Then we've got our frame ground, so we'll make sure we get this going to the frame. So I think what we're going to want to do is grab a file or something. We're going to clean all the paint off on this stud. That way we'll put the battery bracket on top, and we'll pinch this right down into that bare metal, because this is where you can really get some funky readings if you don't have good frame grounds. Anybody calls in and they're having any issues with their wire harness, almost most of the time it's a bad ground somewhere. So you got to do that, because I think the default is like, oh, I can see some clean threads in there. So obviously the bolt is getting good contact, but if you think about it, you've got this is called a washer type thing, and it's all paint on top of that boss. So if you were to just clamp this down and that fastener never touches anything here, if we were to pinch it between the two, you are not getting a good ground. Now, if we would do a lot better is if we would put it on top, that would be pretty decent, but I'm going to try to put it between, because I want to make sure I've got good flat contact.
Continuity.
Yeah, so go ahead and just use that tip of that guy and just, there you go. Okay, Kendall, we're going to temporarily put our battery cage, or battery bracket in here, because we got to take it out anyways to get our gas tank all in there. Yep. So, but what we want to do is we'll just use it to hold the battery so we don't accidentally short anything. Yeah. But the bolt we're going to use is the one we just cleaned off. So get this connector here and make sure we put that right under there. And then I'll hold it Right there. Okay, go ahead and start that. There you go. All right. So now we have our battery positive and battery negative. So grab our battery, take our strap off for now because we won't be needing that. So let's put that in there. All right. Okay, Kendall, we got our battery hooked up. We've got our fuse where we can see it. That's hooked up. And are we ready?
We don't have any gas in there. Oh,
Well,
just for checking if it works.
We're just gonna see if our electric start solenoids work, and then if that works, we're gonna pull a spark plug out and we're gonna put it on somewhere where we get a good ground contact, or we see if we got spark. So if the starter works and we're getting spark, as long as we got fuel, we should have fire.
All right.
So we ready to turn on, give it a shot?
Yep.
Okay, good sign. I didn't see anything
Short out.
yet. There's no bright light where the fuse is. We did it. All right, so now let's check our spark. So before we can get spark, apparently we need to hook up our motor. So we've got a really cool little kit that we sell. So there's a little sub harness here that goes from our harness to the YX motor. So we do have a function key here for the colors if you needed to know what does what. But for us, we do this here. All we need to do for this is to plug in our pigtail and then our barrels, and it's just color match. Okay, so we've got our connections made with our little adapter harness to our main harness. Got all of our color functions matched here. So we should be able to get spark. So, all right, Kendall, why don't you go ahead and hit the starter button a minute?
Oh, yep. Spark.
Do you see it?
Yeah.
Yep, I felt it. All right, so we've got fire, or we've got spark in our spark plug. We've got our electric solenoid is working. So I think we are ready to button up some of our pieces here and then get the stuff ready to install our gas tank. So I think, Kendall, what we'll do is we'll address our some of our little stuff, because we've got to hook up our carburetor yet. We've got our speedometer here, so we've got to hook this up. And then we just want to make sure we've got our wires laid in nice in the belly of our bike, so that way when we go to put our tank in, we don't mess anything up. So I think we'll go ahead and we'll do all those little details, and then we will call it a night. All right, Kendall, we're going to test our flasher relay. So there we go. We got right and left, and we got an indicator up top.
Good job.
All right, so that means we can button up our front headlight. Oh, I think next time we might actually hear it fire up.
Yeah, maybe we'll get the exhaust ready for that day.
Yeah. Ta-da. Okay, I think that's gonna do us for tonight. So we got, what do we do, Kendall? We verified our electrical. We got all our electrical connections hooked up. We know that our motor's getting spark.
We got
Should start.
Yeah.
We got our electric start solenoid. We got our wiring buttoned up to the back. All right, so we're getting close. So that concludes the build for tonight. So if you like what you see here, you can find more of these parts on mytrailbuddy.com.